Thank you very much, Chair. I will try to be succinct. However, I cannot leave aside a very specific thanks to a person to whom we owe the organization of this day, the elder Ephraim, the abbot of the Holy Monastery of Vatopedi. Thank you for one more time, and this time more than every time since I remember the discussion that we had together in Porto Lagos when you extended your interest and you gave your blessings for the organization of this conference. And your blessing bear fruit, and today we are all together to discuss our concerns and seek knowledge in humility, and then take power from your blessings to continue our life in a world and in a society in which it seems that change is not enough and it wants to go towards a transformation, mutation. Thank you very much. So, the reflective approaches to a phenomenon require special attention, especially when it still evolves, both socially and ideologically, and yet we do not have the security of that historical distance. I'm talking about transhumanism and posthumanism. From the people that spoke before, we have a lot of definitions, and this is why I will not discuss about the definitions, and I will try to focus on the ethics, the ethical challenge of posthumanism and transhumanism as it is expressed through the moral principle of autonomy. So, posthumanism tries to become a social movement by creating its own ideology, anthropology, and morality, ethics. And it is worth noting that in the most online fora that talk about posthumanism, there are ethical judgments and reports formulated in a very systematic way. So it is very easy to access this material online. And therefore, we can understand that the people who support it, they do not believe that they are those issues are moral neutral. So posthumanism, transhumanism, and the techno-progressivism are shaped as political propositions, with the most prominent among them the democratic proposition, the liberal, and the anarchy, each with political and ideological characteristics that constitute the moral proposition. A common characteristic of those trends is their foundation on the principle of autonomy and human rights. So, understanding human beings as autonomous, morally acting subjects that can regulate their moral behavior on their own comes to post-humanism through the transhumanism. So, the autonomy of the person to formulate moral rules and make moral decisions to an absolute degree establishes the new moral order, which at the same time gives absolute power to individual rights. An extreme form of this new moral order is the so-called woke culture. In woke culture, under the guise of progressivism, tolerance, human rights, emancipation, and other related socially accepted ideals, we promote a new type of consciousness which presupposes a new anthropological type. So, even scientifically proven concepts change their meaning. We cannot use them if they are contradictory to the new ideology. The trans agenda is promoted urbi and orbi. Science is celebrated one moment and the next is discredited when it does not serve the desired goals. You can autonomously choose at any time what you are or what you will become. This is the motto of the woke agenda. The worrying points are the aggressiveness with which it is imposed, and secondly, the protection offered to it by the economic and business centers that have subscribed to the political correctness. So this extreme and aggressive form of this autonomy, interwoven up with the authoritarian deconstructive rightism, is the moral framework in which transhumanism and posthumanism act in unison and they cooperate. Most of the proponents of transhumanism consider that their movement is rooted in the humanism of modernity, in the theories of Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, Hobbes, David Hume, the encyclopedist, René Descartes, and of course, Immanuel Kant. All the above were distinguished either by their optimism and belief in right reason or by the importance they attached to the experiences of human senses and their utilization by the human mind. The central figure of the legacy of humanism until today is Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher that left a big footprint in the field of ethics, so that we refer to pre-Kantian and post-Kantian periods. But what is interesting in Kant's relevance to this conference is that the foundation of the ethic development of the modern Western civilization were, for the most part, based on a concept that Kant introduced and elaborated, the so-called autonomy. A concept which, after being studied a lot of times, and it doesn't show uniformity when it comes to its understanding by various people, it became established in the field of theoretical and applied ethics, especially in bioethics. Autonomy, according to Kant, is the ability of man to be able to establish moral laws on its own through pure reason, without influence from any external authorities. Every moral act is truly moral when it is a product of absolute freedom and not the product of coercion, impulse, emotion, expectation of a reward, fear, or punishment. Otherwise, instead of an autonomous morality, we have the heteronomous morality, which Kant considers to be false. This heteronomous morality is referred to as false. So to avoid such extremes and arbitrariness in the misuse and misunderstanding of autonomy, Kant recommends the following ethical propositions, the so-called categorical imperatives. First of all, act in such a way that your action can become a universal law, the law of universality, and secondly, act so that you treat people not merely as means, but as ends. This is the law of dignity and humanity. So the foundation of autonomy and its armoring with the universality and dignity became the foundation of the Western modern thought and its transition towards late modernity or postmodernity. The moral freedom of the individual, respect for otherness and tolerance and human rights in secular ethics are mainly grounded in Kantian ethics and its post-Kantian interpretations. The journey of the concept of autonomy as a foundation of the ethics from Kant to the present day is long and tortuous to be summarized here. We note, however, that in addition to various attempts to be interpreted, it has been and continues to be criticized. So the main criticism is that Kant's autonomy describes more the function of ethics without clearly defining its content. It is founded on right reason, pure reason, which is considered as existing a priori. It points out the dangers for all kinds of dependencies and tendencies of human soul, of human nature, if you wish, in the formation of moral decisions. For Kant, heteronomous and therefore false is not only the morality, the ethics imposed by external authorities such as religion or political systems and governments, but that which comes from interests, desires, emotions, or lower passions. He himself, of course, born bred of the Enlightenment and German Protestantism, did not concern himself on how to deal with all those dependencies and tendencies within man that block his pathway towards moral freedom. He suggests the concept of duty as an absolute commitment to the moral law, but he does not explain how man is going to follow that duty. Even great ontological questions, such as the existence of God, immortality of the soul for Kant, are strong moral demands and necessities, and not eternal revealed truths, as it is the case in Christianism. So, looking at things today, particularly in the areas around political correctness or woke culture, which are the main, let's say, moral terrain in which the ideology and movement of transhumanism and posthumanism thrive, we understand that there is extensive use of the terms autonomy, autonomous, and rights. Every new proposal for change of human nature, the values that have constituted societies, social institutions, moral standards, is based on the terms of autonomy and rights as they are derived from the philosophy of Kant. And from the above observations, we can ask the following questions. First, what is the actual relationship between the ethical appropriations of those two fundamental concepts from the concept of post-humanism and woke culture with Kant's thoughts and with his intention to establish a free, autonomous ethics? Secondly, how truly moral autonomy is followed and observed when, in its name, the choices and the decisions come from lustful desires, selfish ideologies, or from empathy against opposing views, when Kant points out the danger towards obsessive tendencies and selfish dependencies of individuals. Third question: what degree of responsibility is there in the imposition of the trans agenda or in the use of technology that reverses the terms of human nature and human person? Is this in line with the categorical imperative of universality, which defines moral choice in controlling the individual's responsibility for the present and the future of humanity? Fourth question: the second categorical imperative of dignity stipulates that man is to be treated as the end and not the means, showing thus the intrinsic value of human beings. But to what extent is this observed in woke culture, where there are constant attacks on anyone who expresses a contrary view? Fifth and last question: in the realm of posthumanism, how certain can we be that mutations in human nature are actually in keeping with respect for humanity, or do they use human as a means of transition to posthumanity? So the Orthodox theology and Christian ethics, in recent years, they have re-examined Kant's ethics with sincere interest, recognizing in it the human. I will try to be more succinct, Your Chair. Recognizing it, the human desire for freedom. The freedom of Christianity, however, is not limited to the level of moral choice, but starts from an ontological acceptance that human beings have their existence borrowed. They are created in the image and likeness of the uncreated triune God, and they have received the possibility of free self-determination in eternity. That freedom, they gave it away after the temptation by the devil, and despite of the ontological freedom, now we have the moral free choice, since we believe that this is how they will have a free will. So the first natural will yields to the cognitive and autonomous will, and according to St. Paul, human beings experience this disjunction, that division. And that division is rectified by the person of Christ, the second person of the Holy Trinity, the Word which became flesh and resides in us. And by obedience to God the Father, He removes that division of the cognitive and the physical will. And man comes back by obeying the commandments. That difficulty that we have in obeying the commandments is to the pre-existing law of sin which exists in man after the fall as a second nature. At this level, the Christian ethics is as heteronomous, not as autonomous, because the sin of person is doing that, but men can, of course, by God's grace, can come back to the level of real autonomy. And this pathway in the church is called the ascetic path. Our teacher, Mr. Manjaridis, that Christian ethics, which is heteronomous in its beginning, but later on ends up as an autonomous situation, is named as the third kind of ethics. This kind of ethics is supported in the cross and in the resurrection, which is the main perspective according to which Christian ethics can receive transhumanism, posthumanism, and the new ethics of the deconstructive rightism of the woke culture. And last but not least, Sophist Protagoras, as the founder of moral autonomy, pointed out, and Mr. Father Vasilios said also, that the measure of everything is man. Posthumanism, transhumanism, and woke culture suggest that the measure of everything is the posthuman. Both in church and in theology, the patristic theology, the measure of all things is God-man, the theanthropos. It is a pity that posthuman is seeking to abolish man seems to miss the opportunity to connect himself with the rising God-man. Thank you very much.